Hey everyone, welcome back to A Goat and a Fox Talk About Movies. I'm Daniel.
And I'm Reynard.
And this week we have a very special episode. We're coming up to the Oscars here pretty shortly. And we thought that would be a good idea to go through our Best Picture nominees and talk about them and rank them for maximum search engine optimization.
Absolutely.
We gotta get those buzzwords in there, all right? Let's see. Oscars, Academy, I don't know. Anyways, that's so kind of went through. We have 10 nominees this year, as we have every. I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm tired. Let's just jump in. So we're gonna kind of start with the return to something we talked about on this podcast already. A number of these are things we've talked about before. The return of Barbenheimer. Both Barbie and Oppenheimer have been nominated for Best Picture.
Yeah, made it big at the box office and then have been pretty successful in a lot of ways in the award season race too.
Yeah, and I think what's really good to kind of start off with right here is that this is a pretty strong lineup for Best Picture, because usually every year there's one or two movies we're just like, well, why are you here, guys?
Yeah.
Why are you in the club?
Yeah, we don't have like Elvis or something, or
yeah, like even in 2019, which was like a great year with a lot of really strong movies, somehow Joker snuck into there.
Now Joker's in our buzzword, so.
Oh god, what have we done? But this year, like every Best Picture nominee has no, okay, like I can see why you're here, and this is like a lot of really great selections here, but one of them still has to be the weakest, and I feel like among all of these other heavy hitters, I feel like, at least for me, like Barbie, as much as I enjoy it, it's a great movie, great message, great production design, all that. It's still like compared to the other stuff we have here, it just isn't quite as strong for me.
Yeah, I think these two films are kind of, this is why these awards are so silly to an extent, is like there's such breadth and variety in what is getting nominated, which is great, of course, but like these films are more kind of on the like blockbuster, kind of like very palatable for different reasons. Barbie is, clearly won a lot of people over and stuff, but it's still very kind of broad and it's fairly safe, we could say.
Yeah, there's some stuff in there where it's like some plot lines. It's like, oh, I wish that would be like developed more, things like that. And well, again, like I still really enjoy the movie. When we're talking about Best Picture nominees, when we're looking at what is going to be Best Picture of the year, then it's like you have to really up those standards.
Yeah, I think like you could see it as an example of something like you could kind of parallel, for example, with fellow nominee like Poor Things, in terms of like this is a very specifically realized world. It's all very kind of, they made a big deal of how kind of handmade everything was and whatnot. So, but again, are there other examples out there that are taking that and kind of running with it a little bit further, or being a little bit more risk taking in that? And I think that's kind of filmmaking that I would prefer to see rewarded. It's fun to see all this kind of like Busby Berkeley type musical numbers and the really kind of fun poppy set design and stuff, but
Yeah, I was like, just earlier today I was actually listening to Dance the Night as I was putting together our notes for this. Dance the night away.
That should have been nominated for song over fucking I'm Just Ken, just saying.
Yeah, I just kind of like has like it's the meme song, but Dance the Night, like that gets you going.
Disco fun.
Because again, like I like this movie, but oh my god, it was a little embarrassing to see people lose their shit that it only got 8 nominations, 10 nominations.
Yeah, a shitload.
And they're like, why didn't Margot Robbie get Best Actress nomination? I think we should go shove Academy members out the window.
Oh god, that was exhausting. And, like, to be entirely honest, and I don't have a replacement off the top of my head, but like, I don't think either of the supporting role nominations were really needed for that movie. Like, they're good. Like, Ryan Gosling's great and America Ferrera is great, but like, it's not like Chef's Kiss, like world shattering or something.
Yeah, and it's like they were good for like, you know, it's a Barbie movie, you know? It's like, you know, you go in there and you'd have a good time with it. You have fun with it. And they, you know, they put 110% into it. They did. But at the same time, those roles are, they're not like what other folks are doing with this category. Like, you're going to tell me, like, you know, Margot Robbie, again, was hilarious as Barbie.
Oh, she's great.
Very fun. But you look at like the layers that like Sandra Hüller did in either one of her movies this year. And we'll get to those. Just like the way that those transformations were done. I'm sorry. Like, so we don't need Hillary Clinton to intervene. Hashtag Hillary Barbie is the most embarrassing thing she said since Pokemon Go to the polls.
I had to like check to make sure it was real when I saw that. It showed up on like a group text or whatever, and it was like, oh my god.
Just, oh my god. It's so frustrating because like, no, we like this movie because it's like, oh, you don't like the movie, you hate women then. And it's like, no.
That's not how this works.
I think we should move on.
Yeah.
And oh, that's at the bottom of your list, meanwhile, was Oppenheimer.
Yeah. Am I partially just being contrarian? Maybe, but fuck it.
Oh, no. And like, for me, like Oppenheimer, like I ranked it I would have ranked it personally like a couple slots up. But I do think it still kind of has that blockbuster feel to it, kind of like combining a historical biopic with the conventions of a blockbuster, which led to, again, great effect. But compared to some of the stuff here that was really pushing the medium, doing things that we don't really see that much, it still felt like, again, looking for a Best Picture, I want to see something a movie that gives me something that I haven't seen before.
Yeah, I think that, like, you know, this has really broad appeal. I feel at this point it's won every single major award in this kind of season. The BAFTA, the Golden Globe. I kind of think it's, barring, you know, some kind of like Moonlight situation, it does feel like it's pretty much on lock. And it makes sense because I think that, like, Christopher Nolan is a good, like, technical director. I personally don't like his screenplays, and I think that he really shouldn't write for himself. And there's like, it's because there's this, like, he's very, and I don't mean this in like a derogatory way, but he's like a very populist director, I think. Like, he's very like adept at like really taking a very kind of basic, not in a bad way, but fairly simple, boiled down message and then really like spoon feeding to you it over and over and over again. And I think I bitched about that during the main discussion of it, but like, that appeals to people because they're like, I see that and I understand what it's saying, and I get it. And then you compare, and then you pair that with like him telling you very loudly that this is a very important movie by having Cillian Murphy say it's the most important thing that's ever happened. And that has a subliminal effect.
Actually, it was Matt Damon who said it's the most important thing to happen in the history of anything ever.
Cillian Murphy just said theory can only take you so far 800 times.
And I agree with your assessment there, because like when I was a teenager, Christopher Nolan was my gateway into getting more interested in movies.
Sure.
I saw Inception, I saw The Dark Knight, and I was like, oh, those are so good. These are amazing movies that are the best ever made. And then, you know, you get in, you learn more, and you're like, oh, there's like other stuff even beyond that. So it's like, it's one of those things where, you know, he makes things like a little bit more, what should I say? He's able to make these movies that can still appeal to a lot of people who don't necessarily like sit down and pick apart movies for fun.
Yeah, exactly. Normal people
have like, you know, like normal people have things to do with their life. He's able to make movies that people can connect to, but they'll have like a little bit more going on than say Ant-Man 5 or stuff like that.
Just a little bit.
Yeah. Because honestly, like, if nothing else, I was really happy to see this movie be as successful as it was. Like, a 3-hour-long biopic about the guy who invented the atom bomb, where the last hour of the movie is all about, like, congressional proceedings and political intrigues. Like, those kinds of movies don't make $1 billion at the box office, and this one did, basically.
Yeah, so hopefully it'll kind of open windows for folks to start kind of digging a bit more if they want to.
Yeah, it's like, I do have a feeling like this is the one that I think is most likely to win the Oscar. I think it's like the popular choice to win the Oscar among the choices here. But the other ones on here I think are just a bit stronger, and we'll kind of talk about those. But yeah, it's like, even though these are kind of like at the bottom of our list, it's still like, no, these are just like they're still really great movies.
Yeah, they're really, really solid, and there's a lot to appreciate about them. And then when Oppenheimer inevitably wins, I'll get to just take solace in knowing that Green Book also won Best Picture.
Oh my God. I have still not seen that movie, and I fear to. Yeah, so, but moving on, because we get to Maestro, Bradley Cooper's Maestro, which is apparently, again, I'm not on social media much, apparently this has become like the villain of the season.
Yeah, I feel like Bradley Cooper, like the narrative is that he's like sweatily desperate for an Oscar, and this is his bid to do so.
And the thing is that, like, the first 20 minutes of this movie, I would have agreed with that, because I was like, oh my God, this is kind of insufferable. But then it kind of like, it pulls back on the Oscar-ness a little bit, and the story really starts to come into play. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm going along with this now, and I ended up actually quite enjoying it.
Yeah, I think there is stuff going for it. I always shy away from like a biopic that decides to like span essentially the person's entire life, and this follows from, essentially it opens with Leonard Bernstein's first like professional conducting gig with the New York Philharmonic, and then goes all the way essentially to his like kind of quasi-retirement at like Tanglewood and whatnot, and then focuses a lot on his relationship to Felicia, his wife, and that's always risky. I prefer, I think Oppenheimer did a good job by focusing on like two key episodes in his life that kind of crystallize everything else out. So this feels scattershot at points in terms of how it's jumping around, and really like approaches feeling like a slideshow at points. But I really do think there's some really artistic flourishes that are worthy of note.
Yeah, I was like, because at first I was kind of like, oh, this like, it feels kind of disjointed. But then I was like, well, let me try to kind of like look at it a different way. And so I started trying to look at the movies like, well, maybe instead of it being like most movies are made, you have like the scenes that flow together into like the big cohesive whole. This one is more like little moments that are a little bit more distinct from each other, but that's when you pull them together, they start to create this grander picture. And when I was looking at it through that framing, the movie began to make a lot more sense, and I started enjoying it a lot more. Because really, I would almost say that this movie is more about Felicia and her and her relationship with Leonard, and how there's like these subtle signs that show how powerless she is within this life.
Yeah, she's kind of aware of his infidelity, of all these other elements, and she kind of, it's like how is her internality affected by it?
Yeah, like there's several scenes where, like, you know, she'll be in a conversation, somebody's like, oh, Felicia, what do you think of so and so? And then she starts to answer, and Leonard's like, oh, she thinks this and that, you know, that reminds me of this thing that happened to me, actually. Or, like, you know, at the doctor's office, she gets diagnosed with cancer, like breast cancer. And the framing of the camera even suggests this, where, like, Leonard is literally between her and the doctor. And they talk about, like, oh, what her medical care is going to be like as she's sitting there and she isn't able to say anything about it.
Right. You know, but then it does kind of acknowledge that at points by it'll often end a scene or something with this really just close-up shot of Carey Mulligan, you know, just finally, like, not giving her voice per se, but kind of like indicating her, like, response to whatever's happened.
Yeah, it's a very... I hesitate to say this because this is going to make me sound like a really pretentious jerk.
Okay.
But it's like
that's my job.
But there's a lot of people I see who are like, oh, this movie has no story. And it does have a story, but it's just communicated rather subtly. You know, it's like, it's because they don't outright say, Leonard, you make me feel this way. But you can see it in the expressions, you can see it in the framing, you can see it in how the dynamics of the scene play out.
Yeah, which is interesting, like using the medium of film to help tell the story rather than it just being this very rote, didactic sort of piece.
Like a movie.
Like a movie.
But yeah, like exactly, like it's... You know, it has a lot more going on than the discourse would have you believe. Again, I quite ended up enjoying it, actually.
Yeah.
It is still pretty Oscar bait-y, like that part of it still kind of holds water, but I still found it really enjoyable.
Yeah, it's Oscar baity, but I would far prefer this make the list over like Napoleon, which is a similar kind of like, it's about the man, but it's actually about the lady, and it's way too much except for like these 3 battle sequences that Ridley Scott really wanted to shoot. Otherwise, he didn't seem to give a fuck. And like, and even like, I liked Ferrari, but it kind of also would fall under this general umbrella. And I think of the 3, this would be my pick. You know, and then also, honestly, there are more parallels to Oppenheimer than I think people would want to admit. Like, I think the biggest one being there is this massive, like, central sequence in each one of the films that is the real just kind of coup de grace for the film. Like, it's the Trinity test detonation in Oppenheimer, and it's in Maestro. It's the Mahler 2 at Ely Cathedral, which is just like... there's like that sound bridge of like she's at like lunch with Sarah Silverstein or whatever, and then there's like choir music come in. I'm like, wait a minute, is he just gonna play like the last 5 minutes of Mahler 2 straight through? And fuck it, he did, and it was amazing.
The blast of the music is like the blast of the atom bomb.
Exactly. There we go.
You know, It's like poetry. It rhymes.
There we go, George.
Yeah. So still good movie. Next up, we'll talk about Killers of the Flower Moon. We did a podcast episode on this as well. So if you want like kind of like our really in-depth thoughts, you can go check that out. But just kind of go over little bits of it. Like, I really enjoyed the story that I was telling, kind of, again, shedding the light on this chapter of American history that we don't really learn about. Really great performances. Really, and just like Martin Scorsese still got it, basically.
Yeah, no, he was really still an assured presence in the director's chair.
Again, a strong movie, but looking for stuff that is pushing things a little bit further. This movie doesn't really do that all that much, so it's a little bit lower on the list, at least for me. That's my take on it.
Yeah, I think it's a very good example of like a historical epic, which the Academy love, of course, and are exciting movies to watch. But like, and it's nice that it's kind of shining some light on this, like you're saying, kind of like an unknown thing rather than rehashing, like, I don't know, like the gold rush or something that's been done to death. But I think if you're going to pick a best picture, and especially in a year as stacked as this one is, like, it should be something that can like then kind of revolutionize what's being done. And aside from just representation, I think the form of the movie is still pretty cut and dry.
Yeah, I think that's like a good kind of overall commentary on it in terms of the Oscars.
It will be interesting to see Lily Gladstone or Emma Stone seem to be the two kind of contenders. It'll be interesting to see how that shakes out. I think either are very deserving, but kind of which direction do the voters go. And also I do want to briefly shout out a movie. Lily Gladstone is another film. I think it was filmed in like 22, but it released last year, called The Unknown Country. She's quite good in that, and it shows a different kind of end of her acting spectrum. So that's also interesting.
Okay. All right. Let's see. Next one up is Poor Things, which was, again, we talked about this one as well, pretty recently, actually. I think it was 2 episodes ago we were talking about this one.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah. And again, I really enjoyed this one.
Yeah.
I thought this was, I had this a little higher up on my personal list. Just because, again, like, I responded a lot to the designs of it. I responded well to just like the weirdness factor of it. I really enjoyed it. I thought it's tackled a lot of really interesting ideas, a lot of great concepts, and I just had a really fantastic time with it. I still love the score of it, especially like the musical score. Yeah, just a delightful movie on my end.
Yeah, no, I think it's definitely, there's a lot going for it. I think that, I was trying to like kind of articulate during that primary discussion like why I didn't really respond to it or whatnot, and like I had a hard time doing it then, and I think the best way I could sum it up and why I didn't prefer it to some of the other movies on the roster is just like, I had seen it I think a couple of weeks before we recorded that, and I was having a hard time remembering a lot of it, which is never a good sign for me. And now, talking about it now, I'm retaining even less, and like that's a big meter for me. Is like, how well do I recall like detail of it? And I just, like, aside from images, I guess, like, it just didn't stick with me. So,
and that makes sense. It's like I said, different things for different folks.
Totally.
Yeah, it's like, I feel like this is definitely a kind of movie that some people will respond really strongly to, and other folks might not stick with as much. But still, solid entry on this list.
Yep.
And then we have American Fiction. And I had a lot of fun with this one too, actually. This was really great to see. I was really looking forward to this. Just saw the trailer a lot, and it pulled things off really, really well.
Yeah. I feel like it's the story of this author who is having a hard time like selling his book, and then decides to write this like absolutely egregious novel that he uses like performance art on how like American and like white America consumes like black art essentially, and it does not go how he intended for it to go, in the least. Like,
yeah, it's like,
yeah,
because for those who haven't seen the movie, like haven't seen the trailer, not sure what we're talking about. So Jeffrey Wright plays Monk Ellison, who's struggling to get his manuscript published because he keeps saying, "Oh, we want a black book." And he's like, "Well, I'm a black guy. Here's my book." And I'm like, no, we want it like a black book. So, like, he just to kind of spite them, he makes this really like trashy fake memoir full of stereotypes, and then they go, "Oh, we love it. We'll give you $750,000 for it."
Yeah. I feel like it really, like when I was seeing the trailers and stuff, I was a little like, I'm like, this could really have been like an absolute disaster, like just really kind of like wanting to be this satire on like race in America, blackness in America, but like being really like kind of toothless about it, and like some elements, I can't quite recall what, like just were seeming like it might not have anything behind it, but there really is a lot of wit to this, and it doesn't offer like it doesn't try to like quote unquote like fix anything or like come up with some grand universal like theory. Like it kind of acknowledges that, you know, he does in some ways like still become a victim of this thing that he's trying to like point to and escape from at the same time.
Yeah, see, for me, my fears went in the opposite direction. I was like, oh, is this going to be like a rant about woke media or something?
Yeah, that could have been another direction.
But I was like, okay, no, they actually have like, okay, they're actually going to go in like a good, like thoughtful direction with all of this. And I think because, again, it does have this very kind of like, you know, it has some teeth to it. It has like actual biting commentary. And it's also just really funny.
Yeah, no, it's got jokes. I loved when he was like initially trying to write My Pathology, and it kind of becomes this weird like the characters kind of appear in his little study, and it's like a really bad like improv session of them like trying to like come up with the most ludicrously stereotypical like scene, but none of them are like quite sure what to do.
It's like, I don't know, this doesn't feel right. It's like, okay, well, let's go in this direction. They're like there is a lot of really interesting presentations of like the way the movie did things. That just made it all the more engaging. That gave it a little bit more life, a little bit more character to it. Because again, it has these great ideas, and then it presents them in interesting, engaging ways, which is half the battle there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, there's like another thing that's interesting, because, you know, we talked about the premise of it, but half of this movie is also about like Ellison's relationships with his family, kind of realizing he's been out of the loop with them for so long, and as he reconnects, he kind of finds out things. He's like, there's a lot he didn't know. Things he didn't know that he didn't know about his family.
Yeah, exactly.
He's like, what? Mom was cheating on dad when we were little? What? You know, or like his brother is gay, but he doesn't really share that with their mother. And there's all kinds of stuff going on. And in the end, it all synthesizes into this theme about like both the advantages and the dangers of putting up a false image of yourself. Where it's like, it can make things easier in some ways, but it takes a toll on you in other ways.
Yeah. It was like a better version of Dream Scenario. It's like centers on an academic and he's actually an author rather than an aspirational one, who gets like canceled or whatever. And then he's trying to shop around his book. Something happens that makes his life very public and blows out of his control. And then there's also the family kind of elements in the like the monk kind of trying to, like, in this case, become a better person or, like, reconcile his kind of relationships. And it's also just got a lot more going on in general, but I was not expecting so many parallels.
I'll tell you what else is. I mean, American Fiction is good, but have you seen Argylle?
Oh, yes, I have. The bigger the spy, the bigger the lie.
The bigger the budget, the bigger the bomb. Sorry, Matthew Vaughn.
Well, I'm sure we'll have plenty of time to talk about that at the Oscars 2025 episode.
Oh, Argylle sweep. Hashtag Argylle sweep. Okay, that's enough talking about that fucking movie. But anyways, back to American Fiction. I do think like your opinion of this movie will very much depend on how well you feel the two halves kind of mesh together between the family drama and the book debacle. For some folks, it's like, you know, I've heard that it's a bit more of an issue for them. Like, they don't feel that it melds as well, and so they don't enjoy the movie as much. But for others, it fits together better. And for me, I feel like there's enough thematic connection. There's enough, like, plot connection between these two parts that I think they gel together just fine, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's kind of like how is Monk's self-identity kind of being explored through the book, and then kind of his familial identity through the, like, meetings and conversations there as they rehome the mom.
Yeah, there's like, because like this is like, it's a very excellent movie, and I feel like in many other years this would have been my pick for Best Picture. But there's just like, there's a couple things with it that I feel like hold it back from being at the top of this year's list. There's like a couple points, like the bathos, is it bathos or bathos, where it's like the comedy is, I don't know, where the comedy doesn't quite gel together. Like there's a part where I don't know if I want to split, there's some parts where like the comedy kind of undercuts what should be like a more serious scene, and then the ending is a little kind of messy. They try to go a little meta with it, and I wasn't quite sure. I'm not quite a big fan of how that played out.
I thought it was so ludicrous that it kind of worked for me.
Yeah, it's like, it's like it's not like a terrible ending. It doesn't like ruin anything, and it does kind of fit with the rest of the movie and what it's aiming for. I don't know, just like I feel like there's just like a couple things that I wish could have been wrapped up a little bit better, like with his brother, with you know, lady across the street that he was having a relationship with. But honestly, like for the rest, oh, go ahead.
Oh no, I'm just saying, yeah, I'm agreeing that like a couple of threads are definitely left hanging.
Yeah, but again, for as good as like the rest of the movie is, like, it, you know, a couple of misses with the execution are very much overshadowed by 95% of these being great hits.
Yeah, I think the fact that like the movie is really trying to take on a whole lot of very big ideas and issues, and that like primarily we're having kind of quibbly issues with it is, I think, a strong point.
Yeah, so great movie, and I think this was a debut feature film as well. So like,
I think
for a
so,
first movie,
yeah.
hell yeah. But yeah, so we'll move on, and I think we're getting to like the last four here, and this is where we're getting into the good shit.
Yeah.
Actually, do you want to talk, like, before we get into like these like top four were like really great movies, like the movies where I feel like if any of these were to win Best Picture, I would be totally happy with that.
Yeah, no, these are all like interchangeable in my mind.
But before we get to this, do you want to talk about some like the other Oscar categories?
Oh yeah, we can do a little grab bag.
Yeah, talk about some of the other stuff going on, like the animation Oscar. What's how are things going?
It's a good year.
I just googled Academy Award for Best Animated Feature, and the picture for it is Guillermo del Toro.
well, it's a little out of date.
Hey, it won't be out of date for another few weeks at least.
True.
Okay, looking at these, I think this one's actually kind of obvious.
Yeah, it's a good year. We got The Boy and the Heron, Elemental, Pixar film, Nimona, Robot Dreams, and the Spider-Man first movie.
Yes. I mean, there's only one right answer here.
There's only one correct answer. Wish.
They're gonna look at the envelope as like, this wasn't on the ballot. They look about
There's like a write-in
everybody.
campaign.
They crossed out the other options and then wrote it in. But no, Boy and the Heron. Next Level.
Yeah.
Because Elementals is alright. It's not bad.
It has that little fucking mudclod kid. That's enough to disqualify it entirely.
Yeah, it's Claude.
The worst character in cinematic history.
Yeah, it's Claude's in the movie, so it has to go directly to hell. But anyways, Across the Spider-Verse, we talked about that one.
Mm-hmm.
That was good, great movie. Just waiting for the rest of the story to be finished.
It's a great half of the movie, that's for sure.
Yeah, and we're not getting it this year, like they said. So, Robot Dreams, we can't watch it yet because it's not released.
Nope.
For us to watch. But then Nimona, we came back from the dead.
Yeah. Revived from Blue Sky.
And you saw this just recently, actually.
Yeah, I only just saw it yesterday. I went in, I knew it had come out, and then I, forgot it existed. And I really liked it quite a lot. It's this kind of, basically it centers on this, future medieval world where, this walled city has been protected for 1,000 years by the generations of the same families, and they decide for the first time to allow a commoner to be a knight, except he gets framed for murder at the very start, and the rest of it's kind of him meeting up with this shape-shifting girl and kind of trying to right the wrongs of the kingdom, to be very broad. But it's just such an interesting I love the aesthetics of the world where they kind of find ways to what if they just kept crossbows, but now they're kind of energy bolts, and the little flying cars look like Cinderella carriages and stuff, and there's still knights and things, so that's really fun. And I think that the kind of central metaphor for Nimona being gender fluid, or kind of you could probably apply it to anyone who just doesn't kind of fit in a box that society deems as quote unquote normal, which more means they're this is something we're comfortable with, and dissecting that idea in a really interesting way that I think is almost it's a better allegory movie than the stupid America Ferrera speech in Barbie. That's fine, but this does it in a more interesting way. I didn't love the animation. I don't like that weird uncanny valley between 2D and 3D that this kind of fell into, but it was really fun.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Had again, there's a great message behind it, and I'm glad that this was allowed to live.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah.
Now
RuPaul has been in an Oscar-nominated movie.
There we go. Disney was able to be like, oh, we don't want to make this. We'll let someone else, take it over and they can finish it. I think that's a great idea that should serve as an inspiration to other studios to this day, namely Warner Brothers. David Zaslav.
Jesus Christ, this man.
Let's talk about Best Original Score.
Oh, yes.
Yes. And I know who you're rooting for. John Williams in The Dial of Destiny.
Is criminally underrecognized. Yeah, we have... It's a bit of a grab bag this year. We have Laura Cartman for American Fiction, John Williams for that movie. Robbie Robertson for Killers of the Flower Moon, Ludwig Göransson for Oppenheimer, and Jurgen Fendrix for Poor Things. Like, the one that's gonna win, because it's the most boring outcome, and is gonna be Oppenheimer. But like, I just feel like Christopher, like across all of his filmography, like I don't know if Christopher Nolan like really cares that much about like the music in his movies. Like he knows that he needs it for it to be like, commercially bankable, obviously, but like they all kind of have that, like, you could take like Interstellar or this or like one of the Batman things, and like you could I think you could trade the scores around, and like you lose some specificity obviously, but like you would still work, and I think that does not indicate that it's a good score. It indicates that it's a generic score, and I don't know if it's because he just kind of gives them the same general instructions, or it's because of this like kind of like Hans Zimmerification of like major blockbuster music. Like you have Göransson does this, Lorne Balfe does this same kind of generically exciting crap. But I think it's going to win. I think the most interesting outcome would be Poor Things, because it's the most unique score. It's really well fitted to the world of the movie and to kind of the overall thematic arc. We talked about that, how like it's very sort of like unformed in a way.
And then at the end it's a fatal thing. Like I love the score for Poor Things. That's my champion right there.
Yeah, that's my pick. I like the Killers of the Flower Moon score. But it's again a kind of a very like Americana sort of, I don't know if you call it, not really roots music, but like sort of like Western twangy stuff. It's well made, but I've heard it before. I think that would actually be a posthumous award. I think he might have passed away. I hope I'm not making that up. Which is tragic. Let me just... Yeah, he passed away in August. Sorry, didn't need to completely rail that. Solid score. I'm not going to talk about John Williams. It didn't even have like a unique like theme for the Antikythera device or whatever the hell that thing was called that I could remember. That's Joe Hisaishi's spot.
Oh my god.
And
because his score was so good for Boy and the Heron, and I'm really surprised we didn't get that.
I was honestly positive, like I was so sure of it. The fact that Hisaishi has not won a single like Western music award is crazy. Like I think he was nominated for the Golden Globe, and I think that was his first like American award recognition of any sort. The amount of like the fact that he's like top to bottom bangers is like, it's criminal, to be honest.
Don't you know an animated movie can only win best score if it's a Disney movie?
That's true. Yeah, so like, I mean, like, look, John Williams wrote some of the most like recognizable, like iconic scores of the like 20th century for Hollywood blockbusters, and they wrote some incredibly good music, but like, if this is supposed to be some kind of like de facto lifetime achievement nod or something, I don't really know, but really funny, to be honest. I want this one to win at this point because it'd be so silly. And then I listened to at least parts of the Cartman score, and like, because I couldn't remember any of it from the movie, which is always a bad sign. And like, it's the most fucking like, it's like what you'd hear in like a shitty cafe where like the guy, like, he still has like a man bun in the year of our Lord 2024, and like it's just like some Starbucks ass fucking nonsense like jazz that just, it's so bad. I hated it. Like, jazz is fine, but like this is like vanilla jazz for like housewives or something. So yeah, no, thank you.
So, but yeah, there we got Poor Things. Want to talk about screenplay and then the actor races?
Oh, sure.
So we'll do original screenplay. We got Anatomy of a Fall, The Holdovers, Maestro, May, December, and Past Lives. I have not seen May, December, unfortunately.
It's interesting. It's about an actress who is studying for a role where she's like portraying this woman who had previously been arrested for being in a relationship with a minor, and then later they subsequently got married. And so this is like years later down the road, and it's for this like movie that she's gonna make about the subject. I don't really know what I think about it as a film fully. I think it's supposed to be kind of campy and self-aware, but I don't know. It kind of left me with a little bit of a sour taste in my mouth. It's well written, but I don't know if it's like the screenplay that kind of sets it apart as a film.
Yeah, because there's stuff here that like, because if we kind of like go into it, I'm afraid we're gonna like start just going through our points for the main four.
Sure.
Like the four we have left.
Yeah, we can circle back around.
Yeah, we'll kind of circle back around. We'll kind of talk about... Yeah, let's circle back to... Actually, do you want to just jump into those four movies?
Yeah, let's just do the big four. Everything's kind of... they're all in every single fucking category, or a lot of them.
So it's like, Yeah, so let's jump into... As the next one we're going to talk about?
Holdovers.
The Holdovers. And oh my god... What a movie. Yeah, this one is like definitely a crowd pleaser. It rings so beautifully.
No, it's not every year you get like a new like bona fide Christmas classic.
Right? That's exactly what I put in my my little letterboxd one-liner. So this movie, it follows a teenage boy named Angus who's stuck at boarding school over the winter break, being minded by his classics teacher, Professor Hunnam, and the cafeteria manager named Mary. And what follows is a great dramedy film that just makes you cry because it's so good. And I think one of the things that's really smart, so kind of like the central character of this movie is Professor Hunnam, played by John Leguizamo.
What?
And
no. John Leguizamo? Paul Giamatti?
What? Why did I think John Leguizamo? What?
I would love to see him in this role. No, it's okay. You're stealing all my thunder today. I get to be the one that's terrible at names. Oh my god, I would love to see that version.
Why did I write that down?
Oh my god, you wrote it down?
I wrote it down too. What? No, don't look.
Oh, I'm looking.
Look. No. Don't look at me. I don't know why I am... I'm so sorry, Mr. Giamatti. What was okay?
Anyway, we're learning about some changes to filmographies.
What I was saying is that I think it's really smart that Professor Hunnam, played by Paul Giamatti, because he's pretty much like the main character of the movie,
Right.
and pardon my language, he's a bit of a hard ass. A lot of people find him unpleasant, but he's never unpleasant to us, the audience.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a couple things here that I think really help to pull that off. As first of all, like very early on in the movie, the head of the school kind of sits him down and reminds him, hey, you lost us some big donations because you refused to pass a senator's son who was failing.
Mm-hmm.
So now you are saddled with dealing with this year. And that really gives us a chance to see that he doesn't make exceptions for privilege. He's not like okay, it's like he does this because he has like these certain values that he sticks by.
Mm-hmm.
And we also see him talking with Mary. And he's like actually like really nice and friendly with her. So like it's like, okay, he is like a decent person still.
Right.
And I feel like the easy way to have written this is to be like, oh, he starts the movie a total asshole, and then he becomes nicer. But if you do that, then it's like, well, we don't really care about this guy enough to see him change.
Mm-hmm.
And the way they do it is like he still has like a few little like embers of like warmth and kindness in him that have just been kind of smothered by all of this like cynicism being piled onto him over the years of his life. And so then over the course of the movie, we're like, oh, we root for him. We want to see him learn to open up more and relax for his sake, as well as everyone else around him.
Yeah, it's really like allows us to kind of slowly like develop this relationship to him, by kind of being privy to some of his more personal moments when he's by himself, and by how he interacts with different students and Mary, as you're saying. So yeah, it's kind of coming at it from all angles.
Yeah, it's just like it's very smart the way it approaches it.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, the other two members of this trio, you have Dominic Sessa, who plays Angus, Davine Joy Randolph, who plays Mary, and together, like the movie unfolds where like they're all stuck together, and we find out more about them, their vulnerabilities, their thoughts, as I don't know, it's just like it's as the story goes on, we just kind of see more and more of these ladies being stripped away, and we build more and more sympathy and empathy for them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's really beautiful.
It's just very organic in its approach, and like I think it's smart because the building blocks that it's using, like I think that like like the point you've raised about Mr. Hunnam, like he's a complete character. He's not like just a one archetype, but like the situations that they are put into are very familiar, like them kind of sitting around together in the evening watching TV, or at the one point the kid goofs off and dislocates his shoulder or something, so they have to take him to the ED and whatnot. So like you're put into these very like kind of simple scenarios that you've seen a bunch and you've probably experienced in some way, and then like allows that to kind of inform like what we start to learn about these characters. So we're not like, we're already kind of partway there, and then in this familiarity we're able to like learn more about them. It's very classic.
Yeah. Oh my god, I think that's like the great way to put it. It's like this feels like a classic movie in the making.
Mm-hmm. It looks like a classic.
Yeah. That's because like when we were seeing the advertisements, it's like, oh, this. I was like, I don't know what this is gonna be like. I legitimately looked it up, and I was like, was this made and it just never got released or something? I don't know.
It's actually a remake. John Leguizamo was in the first one, and then they had to reshoot.
You're never gonna let me live this down, are you? But yeah, it's just a very compelling movie. Beautiful transformation of its characters. They don't make them like this anymore.
No, this was so much fun.
Yeah.
Slash, I cried for the last 30 minutes, but it's fine.
Yeah, it's a great movie. And like I said, like this is one of the, again, we're in the part now where if this were to win Best Picture, I'd be like, hell yeah.
Yeah.
You go.
I really want Paul Giamatti to win actor. Like that would just be so satisfying.
He was so good at
He's so good.
So good.
I could have watched like just 2 hours of him like mercilessly like just reading students to filth at the opening. It's amazing.
I can't fail this test. Oh no, don't sell yourself short. I quite believe you can. It's like, oh my god. And again, like, you know, it's like, so like, you know, like, you know, he's giving these students a really hard time, but you're like, he's still kind of keeping in the background, like, oh no, he's like, again, like you said, he's a complete character. It's wonderful, amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. I'm really happy I gave that shout out to it in my Wish video, because I was like, oh, you know, I was like, I want people to see this, and the video did well. I was like, oh, thank God, people are gonna see my free advertising for the Holdovers.
It's the secret like subliminal messaging. You're like Manchurian candidating them.
There we go. Now moving up, we got Past Lives, and oh my God, oh this was one that left me in tears.
Yeah, no, this is a real, like, again, an amazing debut feature.
I made a short about it on my channel because I tried doing that last year.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really do that anymore because these shorts are kind of annoying to make. But yeah, so this movie, it's about two people who over the course of their lives, you know, they connect, they fall away, they reconnect, they fall away again. And what I love about this movie is this honest approach it takes to relationships. The kind of like that essential adorkable awkwardness that you see in any healthy relationship, you know, where it's like you just kind of feel comfortable being with someone, being like, oh, a little bit silly, you know, like maybe you're a little bit goofy.
Yeah, I like that it's very honest in that. I think it's interesting because we focus on three characters. We have Nora, who moved from Korea to Canada and now is in New York, and then an old childhood friend of hers from Korea, and then her now husband. And of the three, like, Nora has this very kind of like almost ambivalent view of romance. Like, she loves Arthur and she's like interested in like kind of spending time with Hae-sung when he comes by, but then you kind of compare it against both of the men in her life have this like this almost need to like elevate like love to like the apotheosis of experience in some way, you know, like Hae-sung is very kind of like keen on her in this like Inyan idea, this idea of like kind of this ephemeral connection between people, and then Arthur is very kind of like almost neurotic about it. Like, it's kidding, like you're saying, but it's very kind of like, you know, he's always making jokes about his role like it were in a movie, when this is so much more subtle than that. There's so much like unrequited, you know, there's so much unrequited in this movie, because like Arthur's kind of like, you know, like, oh, I would be the big bad guy who took you away from your soulmate, you know, and Nora's kind of like, no, like, it's not like that, you know, I'll love you, things like that. One of the things I really like is how this movie opens from this outsider point of view,
where like you see the three of them together, and the people are out loud wondering like, oh, what do you think their story is? You know, how do you think they're all connected? And it was really interesting to me because it kind of gave the movie this broader scope, this idea like, oh, this could be anybody you pass by on your day-to-day life could have this massive story like this happening to them.
Yeah, it kind of grants an inner life to everyone by proxy.
And then the concept of Indian, oh my god, this is like what like a beautiful poetic thing.
Mm-hmm.
And the way the movie articulates this is the idea that, you know, Indian is like when you encounter somebody in a life, and it goes hand in hand with the idea of reincarnation, where you fall up, and if you end up falling in love with someone, it's something that you reached after thousands of encounters in past lives. You know, maybe you had been great friends in one life. Maybe in one life you had just passed by each other on the train one single time. Maybe you were a bird in a tree whose branch it perched on. And it's this very poetic way of wondering, you know, if we're not meant to be in this life, maybe we'll be together in the next one.
Yeah, and like I think the closure of the film kind of grants like a sincerity to that sentiment in its like most kind of full-throated way, but then also in keeping with this whole spectrum of experience and the honesty of love in all of its different forms. Like it also kind of takes the piss out of it. Like Nora's always joking about how it's just like a pickup line essentially, and that kind of thing. So there's room for like very honest like integrity and stuff, and there's also room for just being goofy.
Yeah, it's like kind of goofy and everything, but then like the end of the movie, like she says goodbye to Hyson for the last time in her whole life, and he drives by, and then she's like walking back, and just this music, and it's one of those things where you kind of pause and you think about like, you know, what path could a path have been different?
Mm-hmm.
You know, what, you know, could you have made a different choice? Things like that. Could it have worked out? Was it always doomed to fall apart? Things like that. And will there be another chance on a cosmic scale? And it's just like, I don't know. Like it gets to me, okay? It gets to me.
Yeah, it's a really beautiful kind of thing to contemplate, and I think it does a good job of kind of exploring that and all those possibilities. Like I think the way it often, like we'll see, you know, when Haesung comes to New York to visit, like they walk along somewhere I don't remember, but it's like all very just really great. But like it's a very wide shot where they're kind of in the distance and whatnot, so it's kind of, again, like it's a little more observational, like we started the film, and kind of like making them smaller within this big world of all these possibilities. Or there's a lot of framing in mirrors or through windows and stuff, again kind of speaking to the chance nature of all of this.
Yeah, it's so... It's like it really kind of ties this like personal story to like these grand cosmic ideas, and I just say, like, if you are like a romantic, like I'm a hopeless romantic myself, you know, if you've ever been in love with anyone, this movie is going to touch you in some way, and it's beautiful, and I love it, and I'm gonna start crying just like thinking about it again. Yeah, there's still two movies that we think are just
like that's that amazing, and you can still go different, I should say.
And then this one, next one up, and we kind of actually flip-flopped on these like last two, because Anatomy of a Fall, which is because like and we talked about this on another podcast episode, Yeah. I was actually kind of surprised because I really thought like the Academy wasn't going to go for this. I was like, oh, this is like, like a French film, like half French, half English. I was like, there's no way they're going to do this. I was actually going to present this for my top highlight for our like kind of like a spotlight thing, and then they gave this best picture nomination. I was like, well, shit, there goes my pick for that.
Yeah, I mean, even France didn't pick him for their submission, so for international film.
What is up with France? It was like they didn't send Portrait of a Lady on Fire. They didn't send this.
I haven't seen Taste of Things yet, so I can't speak to it, but it does look like just another food movie where Julie Binochet is eating a period and is eating food, so...
Yeah, it's like, that's what I heard, is like, because it's playing now, and someone said, like, I liked it, but if you were to imagine what, like, a French movie about romance and cooking would be like, it's exactly this movie. And I was like, oh, boy. Anyways, Anatomy of a Fall. Again, we talked about this, kind of went in depth with it, but I loved this movie so much. I was raving about it as I got out of the theater. I was just glued to the screen the whole time.
No, it's absolutely engrossing, and it's just so masterfully put together in how it presents the case and the trial after Sandra is accused of the murder of her husband, when he's found having fallen from a height in their chalet outside Grenoble.
Oh yeah, and then the trial goes from there. And then it's like you see their son, I get sucked into it. Like their whole family life gets disassembled for spectacle, and their son is in the middle of the whole show, and he's like, "What?" And oh my god, it's so good. Oh man.
It's just this really taut thriller about kind of like the construction of a truth.
Yeah, and it's like, and at the end, like, you don't even know, like, there's no like objective way for us to know, like, oh, did she do it or did she not? And again, it's like really like that, and like I feel like the movie kind of leans towards one answer, but that's just my own thing. Other people think differently, so yeah. Did she do it.com.
I wonder what the ratio is now.
What is it? I'm gonna check that out right now.
I think it's interesting, just as an aside, the obvious like kind of title parallel that has got to be an obvious nod is the Otto Preminger, I think it was like 1959 or 60, Anatomy of a Murder. It's interesting to see the parallels between the two. That one centers on a guy who's being tried for the murder of a bartender or something, after that bartender assaulted and raped his wife. The murder itself was never in question. Like, he did kill this person, but then it becomes more about kind of the process of finding a verdict when we know this other crime had happened, and kind of like how we see in this film, the son, kind of, his sort of involvement as like a satellite in this court case, and how his life and future are going to be affected both emotionally and, parentally, essentially. We see kind of a similar parallel with the wife, played by Lee Remick, and how she's kind of almost she's put on trial almost as much as her husband, because it's kind of like the prosecution tried to boil it down to like, well, she was asking for a kind of insinuation, and so it's interesting to see the parallels both with I think it's Daniel, the son character, and kind of also Sandra herself is attacked for her sexuality in Anatomy of a Fall. So it's kind of, there's a lot of interesting sort of dialogue between the two.
Yeah, there's so many different axes that this goes along. A lot of different things that are being covered, and it's all just wrapped up so powerfully, so succinctly.
What's the ratio?
It's 67% saying no, 33% saying yes, she did it. It's like
Interesting.
Perfect 2-1. And also, so I don't have a whole lot of notes because we talked about this in
extensively.
Podcast. I see in your notes here there's a Criterion Collection cover coming out soon, and
it's coming out. It's getting released in the collection, I think in like April or May, and the cover is so bad. I'm like, the poster, just use the poster. It looks so good. It's just like Sandra Hüller's face, and you're just like, yep, she's in the movie.
What? Let me look at this. What?
It's like someone spent 8 seconds on Photoshop and was like, there, I'm done.
Oh, come on. I'm looking at it right now. Come on, Criterion Collection. You can do better. At least, like, you remember how they did, like, K for Citizen Kane?
Oh, God, that was... Yeah. No, they shit the bed on that one.
They should do a giant S for Snoop.
Snoop. I also love the Snoop cameo in Maestro. That was great.
Snoop sees your sins. He sees your sins, Leonard. There's no escape.
That was my favorite shot. It's just like they're having an argument. It's just like a static wide shot of this like Fifth Avenue apartment, and then just like the Snoopy blimp just slowly goes by. And like this is cinema.
Can't believe we're setting up the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade cinematic universe. So
no, but yeah, like I mean, we talked about it a lot. This was my pick for best film of the year, and I think the reason that I can that I chose this one, again, I think these top 4 we talked about are all like kind of interchangeable, and I just picked it mostly because, like, especially given the strength of all these films, like movies for me can go from like, there's a range, right, where it goes from being like I think it was like Ebert or whatever, who said it was like, they called them like empathy machines, where it's just like pure emotion and like conveying the soul like on screen. And I think Past Lives really kind of encapsulates that. And then you have a film like Zone of Interest, which we'll get to presently, which is almost like a formal exercise, which I adore. I love that shit. But I think that Anatomy of a Fall is like the kind of the marriage of these two extremes. You have like this very technical filmmaking and these very kind of dense scenes and this very sort of like specific treatment of sound design and of editing that is so key to like how the story is conveyed and how its ambiguity is conveyed. But then you also have the emotional core of, you know, of the son and kind of his internality and what he's going through. You have the ordeal that Sandra's being put through and her frustrations at everything. So I think because of that, I kind of bumped it ahead.
Yeah, because I feel like this one is probably like my favorite movie of the year. Like this is one, like if I was going to come back to any of them, I'd be like, I want to come back to this one and revisit it.
Sure.
Again, like I cannot overstate how much I was just like, I love this movie so much at work. You know, I've worked with guests, and I was like, have you seen any good movies? I saw Anatomy of a Fall. You should go see that one. But yes, I love this. But when I saw The Zone of Interest, the wallop that movie gave me, oh my fucking god.
Yeah. I think I don't know if I breathed.
Oh my. I was just like, this movie left me feeling like physically shaken for hours afterwards. And the thing that's really if you look at just the trailer for this movie, this is one of like the best trailers I've ever seen in my life, because I can show this to people and use it to demonstrate to them the hat trick that this movie pulls off. Because when you watch your trailer, it's just like, oh, you just see like these scenes of like this family going about their lives and all, like at the garden, things like that. And they watch the trailer like, oh, that's kind of interesting looking. And then I just like rewind and like take a closer look, and you look and you can see like the barbed wire, the camp walls in the background. You look at the party and you see like the little black smoke and a smudge, and they're like, oh my god, holy shit.
Yeah.
And I was like, and it's just this stark, what's the word I'm looking for? The juxtaposition between this family going about their lives and things like that. Just like, it's like, oh, dad just gotta go to work, we'll see you later. And then the camera cuts, and it's like he's going to work, and it's fucking Auschwitz. And you're just like, oh my god.
But we never see inside, save for one like really ambiguous shot that's just a close-up of him.
Yeah. And it's like, yeah, we don't ever see like this is kind of like goes like in the opposite direction of like, you look at like Schindler's List, which was very much looking, it showed kind of like the horrors of what was going on. And I think this movie went in a really interesting direction with it, because what it did was, I feel like at this point everybody knows the horrors of what happened. And so instead the movie uses sound, and it does it, and it tells us to listen in a way where, because the movie opens, we see the title, it fades away, and there's like a couple minutes of just like black screen. There's like nothing on the screen, and you just hear things to the side. So it's like, okay, it's kind of like, without outright telling you, hey, use your ears, the audience will be like, okay, this is a listening kind of movie,
right? Like an overture.
And then the film kind of like opens up with the family, they're like out on an outing and everything, and just from the way they're shot, there's a very clear emotional distance between us and them.
Yeah.
Usually you have like one like close-up shot of something, like, hey, here is your main character, here's how they're feeling, here's what's going on in their day, like that kind of film language. But here it's like, it's always so distant that you never feel like you said, talking about movies as empathy machines, this movie is very careful to not, like, it limits the empathy we feel with, again, the head of fucking Auschwitz.
Yeah, no, it's all these like clinical, very like locked down wide shots of like just a garden or a kitchen or something like that, and you see everything, which allows for you to kind of think about what's happening in the periphery just outside of frame, or maybe the extreme back of it, but then also, like you're saying, like limits you connecting to these people or kind of like drawing you close to them.
Yeah, and as the movie goes on, it's because I feel like something like this could like very easily kind of go into like, oh, it's just kind of like a one trick kind of a thing. But it finds ways to kind of do different things with this kind of setup. Like it follows one of the live-in slaves, basically, like following along as the wife is like with her friends, she's like, oh, yada yada yada, something, frivolous stuff. As we follow this person who's like, they're trying to like get things set up, they're trying to like be as inconspicuous and not noticeable as possible. All of this to kind of set up like, oh, to have a little tiny silver shot basically for the guy to drink like before he tells people what to do for the day. And it's like all you see, like this whole extensive setup for something that then gets like no visual gravity at all for the payoff.
Yeah, exactly. And there's no there's drama, intention to spare, but it's not generated by like camera moves or something like that.
Yeah. And just again, and all through this, every second is you just hear this constant industrial churn in the background, and it was making my skin crawl the entire time. I was like clutching my stomach in the theater.
No, it's interesting because it's this constant, thing you're hearing, like churning of engines and stuff, and the pops of gunfire. But what's almost like equally harrowing is its handling of, the banality of evil, of course, is a big element, but like kind of the normalization of this, because like the children, there's these two young boys and whatnot, and at nighttime they'll be hearing gunfire and they'll be making little like games of imitating the sounds, and so they're being raised in this hellscape of genocide, but for them it's just completely normal. They're being indoctrinated into this hateful, awful like situation, and that's just gut churning just as much as what's going on that we don't see.
Yeah, it's and honestly, like, because you're watching it and it's like, and you kind of see like daily life is going on, but you always get the feeling that there's always that little tension in the air, not just like from what we're experiencing, but it always kind of feels like it's like they're trying to live their lives normally, but there's always that kind of sense like it's like they know what they're doing is really fucking awful.
Yeah.
And there's never like 100% comfortable.
It's not comfortable, but that like relationship to what they're doing kind of warps and shifts over the course of the film as we get toward the end.
Yeah, it's like there's this point where like the wife Hedwig, her mother, comes to stay with them, and they make all these like really horrible jokes, like oh, like maybe that annoying Jewish woman is here or something, It's like, I got outbid for her curtains and everything. Haha.
Yeah.
But then that night, like Hedwig's mother, like she can't sleep because she just sees like the red plume from the camp, and there's just this really haunting shot where like she's just kind of like she's standing from the curtain. I don't remember if she actually looks behind. I think like she's going to, but then like she can't. Like she just kind of stands there and she's like silhouetted against like the red glow against the curtain.
Yeah, you get the sense that she's been like insulated from the actuality of what's going on. It's one thing to like talk about it and another to like witness it.
Yeah, and it's just like, and you're just in this moment, just like this absolutely like hellish thing that's going on. And then the next morning she's gone.
She's out.
She's just like she's like she doesn't want to be there anymore. And it's just so
meanwhile,
through these
like
different.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Just meanwhile, like Hedwig is making her like garden of paradise like right up against the wall of Auschwitz. Like Sandra Hüller is like such the perfect bitch in this movie. It's so.
Oh my. Yeah, it's really good because like you look at like Anatomy of a Fall, and Anatomy of a Fall, like it is like left ambiguous about like how much of like she didn't really have a good relationship with her husband, but she still like loved her son. Like you still get the idea like she's not like a bad person, but it's just like at least like again it's kind of left ambiguous. And then here she's just like she calls herself the Queen of Auschwitz. Like, you don't
Like,
do
oh
that
boy.
if you're not like a really high grade, terrible, awful person.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh my, yeah, it's just, just thinking about this movie again, oh God, it's, you know, and that's the thing, is like, because this, but you know, I've said this several times already in the podcast, I would want Best Picture to go to a movie that makes me feel something that I've not felt before.
Mm-hmm.
And oh my God, like, I have not had a theatrical experience like this in my life.
This is incredibly unique in that regard.
Yeah. And it's like at the ending, Rudolph Hess, he is like going down some steps, and then I guess like he gets like a vision, or at least we see presented in the same way the camp today, which is now a museum, obviously dedicated to showing the horrors of what happened, with the goal of getting people to recognize the warning signs of hatred and prevent such a tragedy from happening again.
Yeah.
Now, what's interesting though is I feel like, because I took from it, like from that ending, a slightly more like alarming kind of like, or like a more alarmist kind of message.
Mm-hmm.
Because I feel like we're getting to a point now where, you know, a lot of the survivors of the Shoah they're getting old. They're not going to be around much longer. They're not going to be able to tell these stories directly. And there is a rather disturbing rise of younger folks who deny that the Holocaust even happened. Or like, oh, it wasn't that bad. You know, it's like this thing is becoming more and more mainstream, which is really disheartening to see. And so it's kind of like, in the same way that it was so rote and normal as it was happening, like in, you know, for this family here, it's almost becoming rote and quote unquote normal for us to be like, yes, this happened, whatever. And we should never let ourselves get to that state. It's like, that is such a, you know.
Yeah, their sound is still incredibly important, but rather than it being like industrialized genocide, it's like the white noise of like custodial maintenance to kind of clean this memorial museum before like people show up to visit. So it's still like, it's a new kind of soundscape, but it's still in a similar type of like general realm, I could say, which, you know, could signal like a complacency. It's like a softer, more acceptable version of the same kind of industry.
And it's just like, yeah, talk about this movie is just, it's so, it's one of those movies, it's a great movie, but I have to work myself up into seeing it again.
Yeah, no, this isn't like a casual pop it on. Like, I really adored Michael Levi's score to the film. It's very brief. It's, I think, only like maybe less than 10 minutes long, but it's just he's so good at making these like really uncomfortable, like alien soundscapes, and it's so just specific to the field of film. He did Under the Skin with Jonathan Glazer, which was his previous movie, which is like, God, 10 years old at this point, I think. It's just such a, like, again, like when I like really love film scores that like are so cannot be like removed from the identity of the film. This is such a perfect distillation of that. I think it made the Oscar shortlist, even though it's so short, and it definitely could have taken one of those spots. And then it's interesting because it appears during that opening stretch that you talked about, and then it only ever shows up when they're telling those like bedtime stories. And it cuts to these like strange kind of like photo negative sequences of like a little girl like leaving out apples or that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I really like had to go over my head about that because it's such an interesting visual, but it's like, okay, why are you doing this all of a sudden? And like, I guess I just had to like, I read an article where Glazer said, like, I guess like there was a little girl in Poland outside Auschwitz who really did do that. And he said that he felt that he needed to include some sort of like goodness in the film, which would make sense. I'm sure this was probably immensely great, like not grating, but like exhausting and taxing to make. And so like you have to have like a little bit of a glimmer or something, right? And it was interesting, like I suppose in a way, like having it shot in such a different fashion to the rest of the movie, like shows that just how like diametrically opposed any sort of goodness is to what is being portrayed as like we see the evils of like the Hess family, of the Auschwitz at large, like as like in like normal like coloration and all of that. So like to have something, you know, like leaving out food or like finding some music left by a person in turn, like that has to be portrayed in a different vocabulary visually. So it was a really interesting little touch.
Yeah, it was just like, you know, just like going out there and just like trying to do these like, just trying to do give some little relief to the folks who are out there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and like you said, using that different visual vocabulary to kind of show how tragically how out of place such kindness is in this whole situation.
Yeah.
Again, just a very powerful film. And yeah, so I almost feel like I have to put this at the top of this because of the impact it had on me, the way it just kind of bulldozed right into me. Like I think this is gonna be one, like I would put this as early contender for best movie of the decade even.
Yeah, it's definitely really an effective and powerful statement.
Any other thoughts on Zone of Interest?
I don't think that's it for me.
All right. And any other thoughts about the Oscars this year?
Well, it just feels like it's an embarrassment of riches this year. We have some, just a lot of really interesting things being said in a lot of different arenas. You know, it's fun to see more comedies get recognized. It's fun to see just weird shit kind of get paid its due, and then we of course have our more, you know, down the middle safe bet kind of usuals, but a very well executed version of them. So yeah, like it'll be interesting to see how it all pans out.
Can't wait for the write-in campaign for Napoleon.
It's gonna be the Flash.
Oh my god. Oh,
are they gonna do one of those like most epic moments thing again? Or did they realize that that was an embarrassing nightmare?
I don't think they're gonna do that again after the last one got hijacked by the Snyder Cut fans.
God. I will say one thing. It's gonna take a lot for me to tolerate Kimmel again. I don't know if I can do it.
Oh my god, that's right. I can't do this, Sam. But yeah, looking forward to the ceremony. Should be fun to see, you know, because obviously our picks are going to win. You know, it's because
Oppenheimer's
they're
gonna
going
take all of
to.
it.
Yeah. But hey, we'll be back in a couple weeks to talk about Dune. Excited for Dune?
Oh yeah.
We'll be back to talk about that. And until then, I'm Daniel Goldhorn at Daniel Goldhorn on YouTube.
And I'm Reynard/cinema on Tumblr.
And we'll see you all next time. Good night.